All right. We are finally live. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. A few technical faults with YouTube there, but it looks like we are live now. I'm just going to play for a couple of minutes, just while we wait for everyone to join onto this new feed. Just make sure the sounds all working here as well. So this workshop's going to be kind of a rock, sort of rock improvisational workshop for blues players. So don't worry if you've only played blues stuff before. Everything that I'm going to be talking about, you'll already relate to. It's just applying it to some different grooves and different chord progressions, and just playing with a different kind of attack. So I've got some backing tracks lined up here. I'm just going to start by jamming over this one. This is a sort of hard blues rock kind of backing track in the key of G. I think I'm going to keep everything in the key of G today. Everyone has a C harmonica, so I'll be using a C harp in second position for this. So the backing track should be playing out. If you can't hear it, please let me know through the chat room. All right, so that's good. You can hear me. That's good. That's good. So if you don't know me, my name is Wilde. I'm a rock harmonica player. I used to be more of a blues guy, but kind of transitioned. My band has kind of transitioned into a hard rock band just in the last year or so, really. And the kind of ethos behind what I do is, every harp player pretty much plays blues. They all play the same kind of licks and the same kind of progressions, that people have been playing for years. And I always just had kind of a vision of having a modern hard rock band with harmonica as the lead instrument. So that's kind of what I'm about. And I'm just gonna share some of the ideas and things that I use in my music with you in this seminar. So we're going to be using a C harp in second position for all of this. The reason I've chose to use a C harp is just purely because I know that just about everyone out there will have a C. No other reason than that. So we're going to start off using just the blues scale or a minor pentatonic scale to improvise with. We might use the major pentatonic scale later on as well. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about some of the differences between playing rock compared to playing blues. Now, for the kind of rock stuff I play, and for most kind of classic rock, the progressions are still pretty simple. Usually minor pentatonic will fit over the top, or major pentatonic. It's not jazz. There's nothing too complicated going on theoretically. So you can use the same scales that you would use in blues. Just the progressions are different. You're not kind of confined to that strict 12-bar structure. So the main differences really are the way that you approach it. So for playing the rock kind of stuff, obviously most of it's going to be straight, whereas most blues is swung or shuffled. And we want more of an aggressive kind of attack, and more of a cutting tone as well. So let's start with the tone. Now I'm a pucker player. I can play tongue blocked as well, but I choose to play puckered for this kind of stuff, mainly because it gives you a brighter tone, which cuts through the mix more. So if you're competing with loud drums and electric guitars, then that kind of traditional 50s tongue blocked tone doesn't really cut through. So I pucker all the time. It just gives you a slightly brighter sound. And I like to play around with different vowel sounds in my mouth. So you can kind of go through A, E, I, O, U. So you hear when you go to that E vowel, that's just a draw 4 I'm playing there. If you go to that E vowel shape, you get more of a bright, piercing kind of a tone. And that's what I use a lot of the time in the heavier stuff, because if you go to a kind of bigger embouchure like you'd use for a big fat blues tone, you're just not going to cut through in the mix. So we're looking for more of that kind of guitar-y kind of sound. All right. While we're on the subject of tone, let's just talk a little bit about gear as well. Feel free to ask questions on the chat roll throughout this, by the way. So with gear, when I play live, the setup I use isn't really any different to if I was playing a straight blues gig. I'm still using Fender amps, or I use a Honey Boy amp sometimes, which is a bit like a Fender Champ or Fender Princeton. With a high impedance mic, I mainly just use a SM58 at the moment, a wireless one. And sometimes a bit of reverb or a bit of delay. On the records, that's a different matter. In the studio, I tend to use Marshall amps or Messer amps with a low impedance mic, and get the drive and the gain from the amp instead, more like a guitarist would. And that gives you more of a kind of rock guitar sound, which I really like, but it's difficult to use that sound live without it feeding back. Okay, does anyone have any more questions about tone or anything before we move on? No? Okay. All right, so we're going to start with just a blues scale in second position. So I've got a whiteboard here. There is a handout for this too. It's called Second Position Blues Scale. Just going to move this around here. So obviously our root note is going to be, let's make sure you're going to be able to see this. The root note is going to be draw 2. Then we've got draw 3 half step bend, which is a minor third. Blow 4, which is the 4. Draw 4 bend, which is a flat 5. Draw 4, which is the 5. Draw 5, which is a flat 7. And then blow 6, which is your octave. Okay, so you're probably all familiar with this if you play blues. So that is just a minor pentatonic scale. The only difference with the blues scale is it has the flat 5 added in, so it's got one extra note. And the minor pentatonic scale, without that flat 5, is used in loads of rock stuff. So we're going to start with that. Um, so a good thing to practice is just to, can you see now? Someone said they can't see. I think you can see now. I was sat in the way a minute ago. So a good thing to do is just practice running the scale up and down. So we're going from below 6. And just get that up to speed. And obviously you can do the same in the lower octave. So how you would go about using this to improvise over a rock song. Let's go back to that track that I was using in the intro. So this is in G minor. Okay, so it's quite a simple progression. So I would usually start off, if you're kind of trying to get to grips improvising over something that perhaps you haven't played over before, or if you're using a scale that you're not too familiar with, then always start off with the root note. So draw 2 or below 6, an octave up. And we're just going to start with that root and just try and get, just come up with some rhythmic ideas. Okay, so here we go. Okay, obviously that's not like a great solo. I'm just using the one note, but you have to start somewhere. So people ask, how do you start improvising? How do you know what to do? Well, to begin with, it's just about thinking of rhythmical phrases. So music is made up of 3 elements: rhythm, melody, and harmony. And we're kind of taking melody and harmony out of the equation right now by just using this one note. And it's just try and get used to coming up with rhythmical ideas. It doesn't matter what you do as long as it's in time and as long as it sounds confident, like you meant to play it that way. So one more time. Okay, so I'm deliberately just restricting myself to that one note. Obviously, it's tempting to play other notes, but try and resist that temptation for now. Okay, so now we're going to add in another note. I'm going to add in the note down from that, which will be the flat 7. So draw 2 whole step bend. And now I'm going to do the same thing, just trying to come up with rhythmical ideas, phrases, just using these 2 notes, so the root and the flat 7 below it. Okay, so you get the idea. It's still not sounding great at the moment, but it wouldn't do. We're just using 2 notes. So now we're going to add in another step. Let's use the draw 3 half step bend. So now we've got a root note here, flat 7 below, and a flat 3rd above it. And now it starts to get a bit more musical. So we've got these 3 notes to use. Here we go. Okay, so you get the picture. So you can keep doing this, adding in another note and another note, gradually building up as you get more confident, until you're using the full scale, right? So you can start to look for little patterns. So let's say we were using these 3 notes here. You might make a triplet out of those. You know, obviously you can go down or up, and just play with it. So I'm just going to play a little bit more free form now, and I'm going to try and point at these notes as I'm playing them, so you can see effectively what I'm doing when I'm improvising. Okay, so it is all random, as in it's not licks that I've planned out. I don't know what I'm about to play. I'm not familiar with this backing track, but you'll see that I'm really just coming up with rhythmical ideas, moving up and down the scale or bits of the scale, and just finding little phrases as I go. So you know that all these notes fit; they're all in the right key. So it's just a case of coming up with rhythmical ideas, melodic ideas rather, and just playing it confidently. It doesn't have to be fast or flash, as long as you play it in time and you play it like you mean it. So here we go. Okay. So I'm just going to have a look through the chat roll to see if anyone's asked any questions yet. Oh, someone's asked something about vibrato. Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is probably a good time to touch on that. So especially when you're doing these kind of these little scale exercises, or just practicing improvising with 1 or 2 notes, it is important that whatever you play, because we're just playing simple stuff here with a couple of notes, you need to try and make it sound as good as it possibly can, right? So even if you just pick up the harp and play 1 note, you want it to sound as good and as soulful as possible, and vibrato helps a lot with that. It's one of the kind of key elements in my playing, I suppose. It gives you that kind of guitar-y sound, and it can kind of make you sound somewhat electric even when you're acoustic. So I use a throat vibrato. It's the only kind of vibrato that I really use, and it's very simple, but it takes a lot of practice to get it to sound right. So it's basically these muscles in the throat here, and if you imagine you're saying like the letters UH, so but on an inhale. Okay, try it on an exhale first, and then on an inhale. Okay, so you get this kind of choking sound, and you should be able to see if you watch my throat here. Maybe you can't see on this camera, but this sort of moves in and out here, so you'll know if you're doing it correctly because you'll feel this moving. So you can practice that just on a draw 2 or a draw 4. All right, so on an inhale. That's really all it is. But as I say, it takes a long time to to kind of refine it and get it to sound the way you want it to. Okay. Someone says, how big is the difference on air pressure for vibrato on low versus high notes? Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about that. There's not really much difference, to be honest. It's just whatever the embouchure or the air pressure would be for playing a given note without vibrato. It's the same with vibrato, just with that throat movement. Okay, so let's go on to another track. We'll do let's do the major and minor pentatonic one. Here we go. So all of these tracks that I'm using, by the way, are on YouTube. Tomlin has put links to them under the video. So this is the one that's called Hard Rock Pentatonic Blues Guitar Backing Track. The chords in it are G, F, C, and G. And because the guitar is just playing power chords, and power chords are made up of a root and a fifth, they don't have a third in them. And it's the third that determines whether a chord is major or minor. Because these chords don't have a third in, you can play major or minor over the top. So I'm going to start off with the blues scale or minor pentatonic scale that we were just using here. Okay, so exactly the same idea as on the last track. I'm just using these notes in the scale to improvise with. I'm going to show you a couple of little lick ideas as well. I'm not too big on teaching people licks as such, because my approach has always been much more just to improvise using scales as I'm doing here. But I'm going to give you a few kind of key rock licks which should open up new possibilities to you. They're the kind of licks you can build on and make your own variations of and get a lot of stuff out of them. So there is a handout for this one as well. So we're going to start with triplet lick number 1. Now, a big part of my playing is let's get my toilet roll here. A big part of my plan is to use a lot of licks that just have draw notes. I've always preferred draw notes to blow notes on the harp. The reason being, at least in holes 1 to 6, obviously the blow notes in holes 1 to 6 don't bend, and vibrato is a fluctuation in pitch. So you can't really get vibrato on those notes, right? You can get kind of a tremolo effect, but not really a vibrato because they don't bend. On the draw notes, you can get a lot more vibrato, which makes it a lot more expressive, and you get that kind of rock intensity that you can get from a guitar. So I've always preferred licks that use mostly draw notes. So this is one. This is a blues lick, really, but just a little triplet. So we've got draw 4 bend. By the way, my tab, I use a downwards arrow for draw and an upwards arrow for blow, and then a little line like this next to the number represents a half step bend. So we've got draw 4 bend, so we're starting on a bend and then letting the bend up to a draw 4 and then just moving across to a draw 5. Okay, so start it off slow. Make sure you're getting that bend and you're not sort of cheating yourself on the bend. So it's bend, release, and move across, right? And I find it helps to think of these kind of licks as like shapes in your head as you're playing them. Particularly with really fast licks, it helps a lot, you know, with something like this. If you can see that, well, as I'm playing that, it's sort of drawing a pattern in my head, and that's how I memorize it. So with this one, it's kind of a simple triangle. So if this dot here is the draw 4 bend, bear with me, this will make sense in a minute. Then we're coming straight up. Coming straight up to a natural draw 4. And then straight across to a draw 5. So that makes sense. So draw 4 and draw 5 are kind of on the same level. And then the bend is down here. So, and then we have to go straight back across kind of diagonally to where we started. So that's why it's like a triangle. Okay. And you can use that lick. You can use it in pretty much any blues song, and it works really well in this kind of rock stuff as well. Anytime you want to put a fast lick in, you can have a little bank or a little repertoire of licks like this that you can pull out. Obviously, you don't have to always play them the same way. You can improvise around them using the scales, on the fly. So over that track we were using there. Try to do a double time now. Okay, so you can play around with these things, play them half time, play them double time, find different ways of phrasing them, join them together with other licks that you know. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this, and I like it because it's all draw notes, so you're not having to breathe in and out and switch the air direction. That's all draw notes, so that's all just in one long, consistent breath, which to me is much easier to control and much easier to just to get that kind of fluid rock guitar kind of sound with, Okay, so that's triplet lick number one, very versatile lick. We're going to go to the next one on the handout, which is basically an eighth note variation of this. And yes, someone just said Seidel are the best. I would agree with that. I do play Seidel harps, by the way. I mainly use the 1847 classics. That's the one with the white plastic comb. My one's kind of gone yellow now because I've had it for many years. The reason I play steel reeds is just because they last a lot longer. That's really it. Obviously I love the sound of them as well. There's other brass reeds out there which certainly sound as good, but for me these have the edge just because they last so much longer. So let's move on to this eighth note lick, which is pretty much the same as this one, only we're going to add in another beat on the end of it. So this was a triplet: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. Now we're going to do eighth notes, so 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a digga 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 digga. So we need another beat. I'm going to use a draw 4. So again, we're keeping it all draw notes. Okay, so that triplet lick that we just did, you will hear in a lot of blues stuff. There's a lot of kind of triplet-y licks in blues because most blues is in 6/8. 1 2 3 4 5 6. 1 2 3 4 5 6. Or if it's a slow blues, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So you can play triplets over that very easily. But most rock stuff is in 4/4. It's straight 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4. So quite often you'll hear eighth notes played over the top, or even 16th notes. that's quite a good exercise, by the way. I know it doesn't sound particularly musical, but just trying to keep moving around the harp, up and down around the scales, whilst just keeping eighth notes going. So it's quite a good exercise. Anyway, I'm going off track now. So we've got draw 4 bend now, then draw 4, draw 5, and then we've added on this extra draw 4 to the end to make it a grouping of 4 notes instead of 3. So it's no longer a triangle shape. We're starting down here under draw 4 bend. Whoops, here, and then releasing that bend or coming straight up, as I like to visualize it. Draw 4 bend to a draw 4, across to draw 5, and then we're going back. So it's kind of this right angle, upside down L kind of shape. Okay, let's see how that works with the track. This is quite fast for playing the solo, but here we go. Let me just rewind that track. Let's just finish it. So 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. And at the end there, I'm just sliding down. I'm just going draw 4 bend and sliding along down to draw 2 to resolve on the root note. Okay. And there's lots of variations you can get out of this lick too. Sometimes I go, I kind of mix it up and try and create this kind of odd feel by going to the 5 twice. So let me just stop that. So. Or you could go to it 3 times. Or just mix it up. Okay, so that's the first 2 licks. We've got the triplet, and then this one, which is just has an extra note on the end. Okay, and it's all breathing in, so it's just one long, consistent breath. So you don't need to worry about, changing the direction of the air. You just switching between a bent embouchure and an unbent embouchure and making sure you're on the right hole. Let's just see if there's any more questions. Someone said no tongue action at all. No, as I mentioned at the start, I don't tongue block unless I'm playing like traditional blues and want that kind of 50s sound. Obviously my tongue is pulling back to bend notes, but apart from that, no. I use it for octaves as well, but no, my tongue's not really doing much there. Okay. All right, someone said something about third position. We might touch on that at the end if there's time. So the next lick on the sheet there was another triplet. But this time we're going the other way. You'll notice most of these licks kind of revolve around draw 4. That's something I kind of learned from a harp player called Tom Ball. He's kind of a country blues player, really, but he plays a lot of fast stuff. And I asked him years ago about how he does all that stuff, and he said, "Oh, it's it all just kind of revolves around draw 4," and it does. So this time we're going to start on draw 4. So we'll start starting on draw 4, and then bending it. That's draw 4 bend, and then just drop on to the next hole, which is draw 3. So another triplet. Again, make sure you're getting the bend, and it's it is its own distinct note. You can think of this a bit like a triangle shape again, if it helps. And then there's one more lick on that sheet, which is kind of combining this one with the first triplet lick we did. So that was the first one going up. And then we're going to come back. Basically back down the other way. So, right. And you can try looping that. It's good practice for your breath control as well, obviously, because it's all breathing in. Okay, so that's all one breath. So it's a good thing to practice for your breath control as well. Any questions on any of this before I move on again? No? Okay. Sorry. Now, you notice I haven't really talked about the upper octave yet. So let's do that now. So I assume that most of you are probably familiar with, with the first couple of octaves. First couple of octaves on the harp in second position, playing the blues scale. A lot of people tend not to use the upper octave so much, and there is a good reason for that. So there's a couple of notes missing from the scale in the upper octave. So below 6 is our root. Now the minor third is missing. There is a major third in draw 7, but the minor third would be a 6 overblow. Okay. Then the next note would be below 7. Then we've got 7 overdraw for the flat 5. And then a draw 8, blow 9, draw 9 and blow 9. By the way, this harp hasn't been set up at all. I don't do anything to my harps. I like them the way that they come out the box. so it doesn't really overdraw. It does overblow quite well though. But remember, without this flat 5, which is the 7 overdraw, you still have a minor pentatonic scale. So don't worry if you can't get that. It's still a useful scale without it. And then you can keep going up. Hold 10. So blow 10 is your 4 in the scale. And blow 10, whole step bend, gives you a minor 3rd. So you hear that a lot in rock stuff. Yeah, it's the kind of, a lot of people refer to it as the whammer jammer bend. Okay. Someone's commented on YouTube here, says they hate overblows. They usually sound crap. Well, I know what you're saying. The problem is a lot of people, their intonation isn't great on overblows. So, you know, if it's out of tune, then it will sound crap. And you can hear the difference between an overblow and a note that's not an overblow. The people that are really good at it, obviously it sounds a lot better. I'm still not a big fan of it personally, which is why I invented my own tuning. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So obviously you can use this scale as it's written here, using the overblow and the overdraw if you want to, and improvise over these tracks with that too. You get rock guys like John Popper, who obviously he plays a lot of fast stuff, mostly in the upper octave. But his style is he plays more kind of major scale stuff. I'm not very good at playing like him. Because most of my stuff is kind of minor pentatonic, a bit more rooted in blues. But when he's playing all the fast stuff in the upper octave, he's not really needing to overblow because it's mostly in a major key, so he doesn't need, you know, the minor 3rd or the flat 5. And he makes use of the 9 blow bend, which gives you a major 7. So what I did with my tuning, if anyone doesn't know about it already, I brought out my own tuning. It's called Wilde tuning. About a year ago, they are available from my website, and it was basically because I was getting frustrated with this. You know, I can play the overblow and the overdraw up here to get the full scale, but I wasn't able to get the kind of that kind of fluidity that you can get lower down, because you're having to switch between blow and draw and overblow and bend. So no matter how good you get at it, you'll never get that kind of fluidity to something if it's got an overblow or an overdraw in the middle of it. So I came up with this tuning. Where you can get all the draw notes bend on this, so you can get the missing notes in the upper octave just with draw bends. So I use that for a lot of rock stuff now as well. Okay. Any more questions at this point? Someone said, could you go over the finish to your licks down to draw 2 again? Yeah, sure. So I was resolving those licks there. It's draw 4 and bend it, then draw 3 and draw 2. Okay, it's quite a useful, versatile lick, that one. Someone says, great cover plates on the Wild Tune Sidle harps. Thanks. Did you notice my logo in sculpture form up here? Okay, let's do another track. What should we go with? We can go with a minor slow one, or we can go with more of a funky one. Does anyone have a preference? Let me know quick. So we're going with funk or slow minor. Anybody? Someone said funk. Someone else said funk. Okay, yeah, I think funk's the winner there. All right, so I think this one on the website was called Epic Funk Rock or something. So this is just another backing track from YouTube. It's made by a guy called Quist. He makes a lot of good backing tracks. And it's in G minor, so very important that we bend that draw 3 half a step every time to a minor third. About the worst thing you can do is play a major third over a minor chord. It just really clashes. All right. Okay, so with this kind of funky kind of grooves, that the exercise I talked about at the beginning of just taking, let's say we'll take 3 notes from the scale and just try and make up rhythmic ideas with them. So let's go back to just the first 3 notes of the scale. So draw 2, draw 3 half step, and make sure you flatten that third. You can hear how horrible it sounds if I don't flatten it. And what we're going to do, this is something I heard Jason Ritchie say once. I thought it was quite a good analogy. If you imagine that these 3 notes here are drums, right? So let's say a snare drum, a rack tom, and a floor tom. So we're not trying to think about melody or theory or what notes fit or anything like that. These notes all fit because they're in the right key, they're in the scale. So just imagine these are 3 drums, and you're gonna hit them in whatever order you want to try and make up some kind of licks. Someone's asked what key harp this is. I'm using a C harp. Right, here we go. I'm going to try and point to the notes as I play them so you can see what I'm doing. So start with the root. Always start with the root. Just to get bedded in. Okay, so I'm just playing around with them, trying to make it as random as possible. Obviously, trying to keep in time with music. I'm going to add a couple more notes in there as well. have keep feeling the urge to go down to the draw tube bend. Yeah, that'll do. We'll take those 4 notes. So, it's a really fun exercise, actually. I don't do it enough myself, but you can, once you get started on it, you'll find you come up with a lot of new lick ideas just by restricting yourself to a few notes and approaching it that way. So to kind of summarize, then, if you want to go away and have a go at playing in more of a rock style, if you're usually a blues player, over some of these backing tracks, all of these tracks are linked. Tomlin's put links to them up on his site. This one is called Epic Guitar Jam Backing Track G minor. So try playing puckered if you use your tongue block. It will give you that brighter sound that cuts. It's just got a bit more of a kind of modern, more guitar-like sound than the old kind of sort of 50s tongue block way of playing. Vibrato, the throat vibrato I talked about, very important to get that intensity. And just play with the scales, find little triplets and licks like that. Try and find some licks that are all or mostly all draw notes, so you can get that kind of fast fluid thing going on. And if anyone's interested, you can get a Wilde tuned rock harmonica from my website, which will open up the upper octave to you a bit more, especially if you're not an overblower. Okay, I'm going to take some questions before we finish. So let me have them now, if you could, please. So Dirk has asked if I make use of hand effects like wah and such. Yeah, absolutely. I probably haven't been doing it too much during this live stream because I'm usually pointing with one hand. But yeah, definitely. So I probably do it more if I'm playing an acoustic show and I'm playing in front of a if I'm playing in front of a mic, you can get a lot more color using the hands. If you're playing with a mic cupped, I use just a 58 like this, then it fattens the tone when you cup it and it thins the tone when you take the hand off. But I use that for coloration as well, for sure. Any more questions? Someone says the backing track is in G minor, not G. That's what I said, I think. Maybe they weren't talking to me. Someone's mentioned about minor harps here. Yeah, I like minor tuned harps. Natural minor harps are good. I haven't got one in the right key for this track here, but they're good. The thirds are all flattened for you. it saves you having to play a 4 overblow to get the, the flat third of the 4 chord. And you don't need the 6 overblow to get your flat third at the top. And you can play minor chords on them as well. I use them for my version of Parisian Walkways. Someone said, I thought you said the backing track was in G minor. It was. Right. As a rock player, do you prefer low or high tone harps? Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely high. Because the lower keys don't really cut. I mean, I like sometimes I like a G harp, which is quite low. Because you can get that big, fat kind of filthy, distorted, gritty thing. But when it comes to kind of playing faster stuff, it will get a little bit woolly, and you start to, it slows you down basically, because the reeds take a bit more effort. You have to adjust your mouth shape more to move through the bends quickly. And because the reeds are longer, they're a little bit more lethargic. They don't respond quite as fast. So if I was going to play more of a, excuse me, trying to get my high G out. Yeah, if I was going to try and play more of a kind of guitar sounding, more ripping kind of lead solo. Then I might go for a high G instead, because the reeds are really short. You barely have to make any adjustment with your mouth to bend them, and you need less air to make a sound as well. I do quite like the low keys in my tuning though. Like I use the low F, where the bottom is really quite low. But the upper octave on that is nice, because it's not too shrill and shrieky. But to answer your question, though, typically I prefer the higher keys. I think D is probably my favorite harp. It's kind of the right balance. Not too high, not too low. It's got lots of cut to it. Someone says, do I endorse any harmonica brands? Yes, Seidel. And they make my tuning for me exclusively as well. Tim says, this has been great. I hope you're feeling well. Thanks, Tim. On the Wizard intro, do you play a D harp? Yes, that's just a standard D harp on that, which is what Ozzy used as well. So it starts on a draw 2 bend. And that's it, really. Probably time for a couple more questions if you want. Someone on YouTube here saying, are you going to do more videos of signature licks of famous harp artists? Maybe. Yeah, that was a series I started a couple of years ago. I did Sonny Boy Williamson and Sonny Terry, and then I kind of trailed off after that. But yeah, I suppose I could do that. Someone said something about my motorbike accident. Yeah, I did nearly die about 3.5 months ago. Broke my back, broke my neck in a motorbike crash, but I'm pretty much back to normal now. My back is aching quite a lot just sitting here, but Yeah, I was kind of out of action for a couple of months. Managed to get back in the gym now, get back gigging again as well. So it's all going well, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna try and do some more YouTube videos. Someone was asking about that. Okay, I think that's about all we have time for. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been good. CBD oil, someone said. Yes, it does help. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and thanks, Tomlin, for having me. And I hope to see you all again soon. Cheers. Bye.